Yeah.
Two top 10 teams losing to unranked opponents, plus two Power 5 conferences returning to college football, equals a wild AP Top 25 poll. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, breaking down everything you need to know for these brand new Week 5 rankings. A set filled with brand new teams and tons of changes, the most that we have seen so far this season. And we certainly do not agree with all of them. So let's take a look at what we're dealing with here going into Week 5 of this college football season. Let's start with the headlines first. Week 4 was one of the craziest weekends of college football we've seen in a very long time. The third-ranked Oklahoma Sooners fell at home to Kansas State. The sixth-ranked LSU Tigers, the reigning national champions, allowed 623 passing yards to KJ Costello and fell at home to Mississippi State by 10. We'll touch on Oklahoma and LSU in a second and where they now fall in the AP Top 25. But those were the biggest storylines. But keep in mind, we had three other ranked versus ranked matchups, which meant that three other ranked teams lost. That was Army, Kentucky, and Louisville, who ironically were ranked 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. So 5 top 25 teams in Week 4 all went down. Now, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have now announced that they are returning to college football, the Big Ten coming in late October, the Pac-12 coming back in early November, and now those teams are eligible to be ranked in the AP Top 25, and we now see those teams up here. The Big Ten getting a handful of teams in there. Ohio State in at number 6. Penn State in at number 10. Wisconsin in at number 19. And Michigan coming in at number 23. The Pac-12 only has one representative. Of course, that is Oregon coming in at 14th. They are the lone Pac-12 team ranked in the AP Top 25. So you throw in those 5 teams that we mentioned, the 4 Big Ten teams plus the 1 Pac-12 team. You count all of the crazy upsets that we saw in Week 4, and there were bound to be tons of changes in this new Top 25 poll. So let's just start from the top, and let's work our way down. Clemson, Alabama, the undisputed number 1 and number 2 teams in the country. No need to argue that. No need to argue that. They have proven that time and time again, and it's just undisputed. There's really no need to worry about it. Alabama taking care of Missouri in their opener, their SEC opener. Clemson having taken care of business a few weeks ago against Wake Forest, took care of business against the Citadel. Did not play this past week, but will return to the field very soon. So number 1, number 2, not a big deal there. You see your first slight change at number 3 as Florida jumps Georgia to claim the third-ranked team in the country. Now, Georgia was number 4 in Week 4. Of course, the previous number 3 team in the country was Oklahoma, who has now fallen all the way to 18th. But Florida, with their win over Ole Miss, a 51-35 win over Lane Kiffin and the Rebels, propelled over Georgia, who struggled for the majority of the game against Arkansas. They were trailing 10-5 about midway through that third quarter before finally pulling it together and defeating the Razorbacks 37-10. They scored the final 32 points in that game against Arkansas. So I think the AP poll kind of viewed that game as Ole Miss maybe being a little bit better than Arkansas. Florida going on the road and taking care of business there, dropping over 600 yards of offense on the Rebels, but also giving up 600 yards themselves. But still, Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts making a phenomenal duo on that offense. And the AP poll viewed them as a better option to get that number 3 spot ahead of their heated rival in the East in Georgia. So you have 3 straight SEC teams there. Number 2, Alabama. Number 3, Florida. Number 4, Georgia. Number 5, Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish slip into the top 5 without even having to play a game in Week 4. Notre Dame did not play because their game against Wake Forest was canceled due to the coronavirus, due to too many cases among the teams. And without playing, Notre Dame slipped all the way up to 5th because they were still behind Oklahoma and LSU. Those 2 losses propelled the Fighting Irish up a few spots as we have seen for a handful of teams already. Ohio State comes in at number 6, and I like this spot. I like this spot for Ohio State. It was going to be very interesting to see where the AP poll was going to rank these Big Ten teams, and Oregon for that matter. Where were they going to rank them, considering they haven't played a game yet this season, and they're not going to play a game for nearly a whole nother month? That was the million-dollar question, because Ohio State did not deserve to be the second-ranked team in the country. Many might believe they are the second-best team in the country behind Clemson. Some might think they're the first. They might think they're number 1. But you can't put them there until you've actually seen them play. You cannot put them there until you've seen them play. And you certainly can't put them there ahead of a team like Alabama or Florida or Georgia or Clemson for that matter. Anybody that's ahead of Ohio State right now, because they've already played and they've proven they deserve those spots. Now, granted, Ohio State is above Auburn, who just defeated Kentucky. They are above Miami, who has defeated Florida State and Louisville. So I know they're ahead of some teams here, teams that I do believe that if Ohio State were to face off against right now, they would defeat. So I think the Buckeyes have a very good spot at 6. I think Penn State is the same exact way, coming in at 10th. They are a top 10 team. I would have said that 2 weeks ago. I say that now. Penn State is a top 10 team. They are a playoff contender. They are a Big Ten title contender. So a 10th place spot for them is very fair and very reasonable. To be ahead of a team like Central Florida and North Carolina and guys like that. That to me is fair. Those two teams are arguably the top 2 teams in the Big Ten, and they certainly deserve to be in the top 10. So Ohio State, Penn State, happy with their spots. Auburn coming in at number 7, becoming the 4th SEC team in the top 10. So 40% of the top 10 is made up of teams out of the Southeastern Conference. The Tigers taking down Kentucky 29-13 in Week 4. Miami, that was another team I was interested to see where they would be. They were 12th last week when they defeated Florida State, manhandled Florida State 52-10. And I wondered, with the addition of these Big Ten and Pac-12 teams, where would Miami fall? And they had an impressive win over Louisville. Very impressive victory over Florida State. Would they remain around 12, or would they crack the top 10? I was very interested in that. Not only did they crack it, they're well into the top 10. 8th in the country. If you had told somebody 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, that Miami was going to be the 8th ranked team in the country going into October, I guarantee a lot of people would have told you were crazy. But yet here the Hurricanes are. Manny Diaz and his Hurricanes, 8th in the country. They do not play on October 3rd, but on October 10th, they travel to Clemson. And that game going to be more exciting and maybe a bit of a bigger test for Clemson than many thought it would be before the season began. So that's going to be a potential top 10 showdown that we'll have on our hands coming up here in a few weeks. So an exciting one there and exciting times down at the U for Miami and Manny Diaz. Texas coming in at 9th. The Longhorns moving down one spot. They were 8th in the country when they barely escaped Texas Tech 63-56 in overtime. The mighty Texas Tech Red Raiders who survived Houston Baptist by 2 points 2 weeks prior to that Texas game. So not an impressive showing for Tom Herman and the Longhorns. They were 18-point favorites. They got taken to overtime and probably shouldn't have even won that game as the Longhorns trailed by 15 points with under 4 minutes in the game. So they got lucky. Skill, sure, put up a lot of points, but it was very fortunate that Texas survived that game. The Big 12 not looking good at all, but yet here we are. It's not Oklahoma, it's Texas that's the highest ranked Big 12 team right now. And then, as we mentioned, Penn State rounding out the top 10, a spot they very well deserve. It's a very well-deserved spot for the Nittany Lions. Let's jump over into the second column here. Central Florida, they're in at number 11. 51-28 victory over East Carolina. I gotta say, the Pirates put up some points against the Knights. Central Florida is going to have to fix their defense. Now, I know some of those points came late for East Carolina, but still, they were heavy favorites, 27-point favorites. They only win by 23, so they wouldn't have covered in that game. Central Florida took care of business against Georgia Tech. They are the highest-ranked Group of 5 team right now, so it's a spot that, again, like Penn State, is worthy. Central Florida is certainly worthy of that spot. I do believe they are the best Group of 5 team in the country right now, without a doubt. Now, of course, when the playoff committee releases their rankings in November, if Central Florida cracks the top 10, for example, they're going to fall out of that because of their strength of schedule. It's just not quite there. But right now, for fun, they are 11th in the country and look to continue their success and really their quest to make a New Year's Six bowl game, trying to get back to that New Year's Six bowl game after missing out last season. So Central Florida in at 11. Texas A&M is another team that kind of caught my eye. Before we get to them, North Carolina coming in at 12th. You look at the Tar Heels. They haven't played in what's been 2 weeks now. It's going to be 3 weeks when they hit the field on Saturday against Boston College. So this is not going to be an easy test for Mac Brown and the Tar Heels, but one that I do think they'll be able to take care of against a Boston College team that just barely escaped Texas State. But it's going to be great to see Sam Howell and this Tar Heel squad back in action, a team that many thought and do think can contend for an ACC title this season, although the competition is getting a little bit more tougher now. Miami surprising some people, Clemson, of course, still at the top. So you've got a handful of teams now in the ACC that have surprised and can be competitive, even if they're not necessarily elite by any means. So North Carolina coming in at 12th. They should remain at that spot, if not improve on that spot with a win over Boston College. And Texas A&M down 3 to number 13 following that very abysmal and pitiful win. Usually you use those adjectives when you talk about losses, but this is a win for Texas A&M, but only beat Vanderbilt 17-12. It was sloppy. It was careless. And I do think that Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies are lucky to have escaped, because if the Aggies had faced a team that was just a little bit better than Vanderbilt, maybe a little bit more experienced than Vanderbilt, they probably would have lost that game. They only beat the Commodores by 5, committed 3 turnovers in that game, and really struggled across the board. So if they face a team that's better offensively than Vanderbilt was, a team that's maybe a little bit smarter across the board than Vanderbilt was, A&M loses, and they're not 13th. They might be out of the rankings or at least outside the top 20. So they do drop 3 spots here. Oregon coming in at 14th. As we mentioned, the lone Pac-12 team in this set of rankings, and probably will remain that way for many weeks now. Another thing you have to keep in mind with these Big Ten and Pac-12 schools is now they're ranked. Where will they go from here? Because they're not playing for weeks on end. Remember, Big Ten does not start until the weekend of October 24th. The Pac-12 does not start until the first weekend of November. So if teams ahead of them, if teams ahead of Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Florida, Clemson, Alabama, if teams like them lose, I would expect Ohio State, Penn State, guys like that to move up a few spots. If teams ahead of Oregon lose, Texas A&M, who plays Alabama this weekend, very well could lose that game. So Oregon can move up a spot or two. They will move up, but the AP poll has to think, how high do they deserve to move up, especially if teams behind them are playing and winning against semi-quality opponents. So that's something that will be interesting to watch over these next few weeks, as these Big Ten and Pac-12 schools are not going to play. And then you wonder, the Big Ten and Pac-12 schools that are outside of the rankings, such as USC, who's the second best Pac-12 school when it comes to rankings, coming in at 29th, where do they go? If teams will start losing ahead of them, does USC somehow slip into the rankings without even playing a single game? Very interesting questions here that the AP poll, the Associated Press, are going to have to think through and think through carefully, because these rankings should not be taken lightly. These rankings are a big deal, and there will be plenty of teams that are playing football right now and probably do deserve to be ranked ahead of some of these programs that haven't even played at all. So Oregon, though, in at 14th. USC, the second highest Pac-12 school, coming in at 29th, not even in the top 25. The Ducks, the Pac-12's only hope of getting into the college football playoff this season, and with the late start, with the shortened schedule, those hopes are very, very slim. What I like about this right here in this set of rankings here, after Oregon, Cincinnati, fantastic. They're in at 15th. No need to talk about the Bearcats that much. What we do want to talk about is Mississippi State and Mike Leach. 623 yards from KJ Costello against the reigning national champions. 16th to me is the perfect spot for the Bulldogs. Now, some think that they should be ranked higher. Some think that Mississippi State should be 15th. Some think they should be high as top 10. I'm not going that far yet, although I will say this. If a team like Texas was unranked, or let's say USC was unranked, one of those big powerhouses, and they defeated the reigning national champions by 10 points and threw for that many yards on the road, I guarantee they would have gone from unranked to top 10. Mississippi State just doesn't have that history and that pedigree as some of these other schools. But they do jump from unranked to 16th, and I think that's perfect because I would have ranked them 16th or 15th, but no higher than that. 15th to me is the perfect spot for Mississippi State, and I'll accept 16th. Mike Leach doing a fantastic job with the Bulldogs already. There's a very good chance they could start potentially 4-0. Those next 3 games, very winnable for Mississippi State. Their next one is this Saturday against Arkansas, a team that held their own defensively against Georgia for the first 2.5 quarters, but this is still a young and inexperienced Arkansas defense that's going to be very much tested by this Mississippi State passing attack, and I don't know if they're going to be able to stop it. So the Bulldogs going to continue to climb in the rankings, will be a top 15 team come week 6. Something that, again, I guarantee you no one thought was going to happen just a few weeks ago. So I love that Mississippi State is in the top 20, and they'll be top 15 by next week, assuming they take care of Arkansas. Following Mississippi State, we've got Oklahoma. So now we're moving into here. I love how they put Oklahoma State and Oklahoma back-to-back. The AP poll tends to do that quite a bit. They tend to do that quite a bit, putting rivals against each other or teams within the same conference right up against each other in the rankings. Oklahoma State at 17th, Oklahoma at 18th, dropping 15 spots following that 38-35 loss to Kansas State. They led by 21 in that game and blew it to the Wildcats, losing to the Wildcats for the second year in a row. So they blow the 21-point lead. They drop 15 spots. That's well-deserved. This is the Kansas State team that lost to Arkansas State a couple weeks ago. Lost to Arkansas State, and then comes into Norman and beats Oklahoma. They deserve to drop 15 spots. And now they've got a road date at night in Ames against Iowa State. But Oklahoma loses that game. The Sooners are out of the rankings, and you can kiss their playoff hopes goodbye. So really, it's a must-win. It's only a 3rd game of the season for Oklahoma, but it's a must-win for Lincoln Riley and the Sooners. We've seen them drop regular season games before. We've seen them lose 1 game in the regular season every year under Lincoln Riley, and they still win the Big 12, and they still make the playoff. But this year just feels a little bit different. Tricky game coming up in Ames, Oklahoma down to 18th. Following that, Wisconsin, another Big 10 program, coming in at 19th. Interesting spot for them. Obviously a West favorite here, but I will say there's one Big 10 team who's missing, and that's Minnesota. Where are the Golden Gophers? Where are the Golden Gophers right now? Not even ranked here, guys. It's an 11-win team from 2019. Didn't even get a look at the top 25. Yeah, they're receiving some votes, but they should definitely be in the top 25 here. The AP poll and the playoff committee, for that matter, kind of snubbed Minnesota countless times in 2019, and they certainly did not get the credit and the recognition they deserve now in Week 5. LSU coming in at 20th, down 14. So Oklahoma and LSU, naturally, the biggest fallers in Week 5. Between Week 4 and Week 5, Oklahoma falling 15 spots, LSU falling 14 spots, all the way to 20th. We touched on them a second ago when we talked about Mississippi State. We know LSU missed a lot of people. They lost so much from that national championship squad. Derek Stingley didn't play, obviously on the defense, although I don't think Stingley would have made up for 10 points for the Tigers. Yes, they lost Joe Brady. They lost Dave Aranda. So the Tigers were depleted. They were depleted. This was going to be an opportunity for them against Mississippi State to figure out who they were, to work out any issues they had, although I don't think anybody saw them having that many issues. Miles Brennan played extremely well, though, in my opinion. 345 yards and 3 touchdowns. A couple costly interceptions, though, that, in a way, ended up being the difference maker in that game. But LSU has a chance to right the ship this upcoming week. They go to Vanderbilt. It should be an easy bounce-back win for the Tigers. And then they can really put their foot on the gas and start to continue through a very rough SEC gauntlet. But 20th in the country, we knew they weren't going to win the national title this year. We knew they might not even win the SEC West this year just because of how much they lost. That game against Mississippi State showed us that. The LSU is going to take a step back in 2020. The question is, how much? Tennessee, back where they belong, 21st in the country. I told you guys a few weeks ago, the Volunteers did not deserve to be a top 15 team. They certainly were not a top 15 team. That showed with their road game against South Carolina, nearly falling to the Gamecocks. Had South Carolina not muffed that punt in the fourth quarter, they would have had a chance to go down there and win the game. And I think the Gamecocks would have done it. So Tennessee, with all the shifts, dropped 5 spots down to 21st. Remember, they originally started at 25th. When you took out all the Big Ten teams, they jumped from 25th to 16th, I believe. That wasn't right. Volunteers, I told you, we're not quite there yet. 21st is a perfect spot for Tennessee. They're in at 21st. BYU moving down 4 spots to 22. The Cougars outscoring their opponents 103-10 this season. Killing Navy 55-3, defeating Troy last week 48-7. So 103-10 for BYU this season. Unbelievable job by Kalani Sitake and his squad out in Provo. So BYU obviously has Louisiana Tech coming up this Saturday. Their strength of schedule nowhere near as impressive as some of these other programs. And that's part of the reason I think they've dropped as well. But if they keep winning, they're going to remain a top 25 team. And there's a very good chance they could finish 2020 with an undefeated record. Michigan, another one of those Big Ten teams that are ranked 23rd. How long will they stay in there? And when they start play with a couple key opt-outs, how well will Michigan play overall? Coming in at 24th, you have Pittsburgh. Why? This is one of our major discrepancies here. Why is Pittsburgh 24th? They moved 3 spots down following a win over a ranked opponent in Louisville. They were 21. Louisville was 24. Pittsburgh beat them. Pittsburgh beat them by 3, and yet they dropped 3 spots. They held that offense in Louisville to 20 points. They had 7 sacks. They forced 3 turnovers. And yet Pittsburgh dropped 3 spots? If anything, the Panthers should have remained at 21. They should have remained 21st. I certainly would put Pittsburgh above Tennessee right now. So they should remain 21st. I think they should have moved up to 20th or 19th. I'm not asking for a major move in the rankings, but they sure as heck shouldn't have dropped. The Panthers are for real, guys, and to me that's extremely disrespectful to Pat Narduzzi's squad, who was 3-0 for the first time since 2014. So the Panthers dropping 3 spots here. There's a very good chance they can be 5-0 here in a few weeks before they really hit their toughest test in ACC play. And surely, to God, by that point, the Panthers will be a top 20 team. They need a little more respect. Put a little more respect on Pittsburgh's name because they're a good football team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And to drop 3 spots after a win over a ranked opponent, and a good one at that in Louisville, to me, just does not make sense, and is extremely disrespectful to go along with that. And then finally, Memphis, rounding out the top 25. They moved down 8 spots. Tigers have not played since September 5th, and they've got a big game this Saturday, if in fact they do play, on the road at SMU. So a big game for Ryan Silverfield and his Tigers squad, trying to challenge UCF in the end for that highest-ranked Group of 5 conference champion and get back to a New Year's Six bowl game, as the Tigers did so last year, making the Cotton Bowl. And then our last note, guys, I do want to touch on real quick. 25 teams right here. 1 through 25. We broke down every single one for you. And you're going to get that every single week here. But there's one team that should be ranked. That is not. And my man Hunter Shin's going to agree with me. Where is Virginia Tech? Where are the Hokies? Where are the Hokies? They were 20th in the country last week. Had, I believe, 23 players out due to COVID, including their quarterback in Hendon Hooker. And I know North Carolina State is no powerhouse. They're no ACC juggernaut. But with all those players out, with a brand new defensive coordinator for the first time in, 2 decades? They defeated North Carolina State 45-24. Great defensive performance, great offensive performance. They were the 20th ranked team in the country, and now they are not even in the top 25. I strongly disagree with that. That makes no sense to me. Again, NC State, the Wolfpack, not your biggest powerhouse, but Pittsburgh drops a few spots after a win over a ranked opponent. Virginia Tech was ranked comfortably last week, and now they're out. They are 26. They're getting the most votes out of teams not ranked right now, so they're right on the outside looking in. But I believe that Justin Fuente's Hokies deserve to be in the top 25, 25th at the least. Drop Memphis out for a second and put the Hokies back in because that team, when they're healthy, is going to be very, very dangerous in the ACC. So a couple discrepancies here, guys, especially within the ACC here. Not getting enough respect, in my opinion. Clemson, Miami, getting the respect they deserve. Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, not even close. So a few things here that kind of piqued our interest here. Obviously, major shifts. When Oklahoma and LSU lose to unranked opponents at home, you're going to see major shifts. When the Big Ten, the Pac-12 decide, hey, we're going to play football now because that makes sense, you're going to see some major shifts. So a lot of shifts, a lot of changes in the Week 5 Top 25 poll. We have a couple big ranked versus ranked matchups this weekend. None bigger than Auburn, number 7, traveling to Georgia, number 4. So a top 10 matchup. You're going to see at least one top 10 team lose in Week 5, which means more crazy shifts coming your way going into Week 6. And, of course, we'll be right here at the Gridiron Expert breaking down every single move for you like we've done the previous weeks and like we'll do for the remainder of the season. So, guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And also make sure to check out everything down in the description below. We have got exclusive content on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for that newsletter. Sign up for that expert picks. Both of those coming out this week. Sign up for our Patreon account as well for exclusive content that you won't find here on YouTube, you won't find on social media, you won't find on our website, only on Patreon. So much college football analysis on all of our sites, all of our platforms that you do not want to miss. So check it all out right down there in the description. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.